Logan Reed walked into that glass tower dripping rainwater on their marble floor, holding a bouquet he couldn't afford to buy himself, and the woman who answered the door looked at him like he was dirt on her shoe. Elena Voss, billionaire, untouchable, the kind of person who could destroy a life with a phone call. He had $6 in his bank account and a daughter waiting for dinner. He should have just left the flowers and run. But then she opened that card, and everything stopped. Her face went white, and Logan realized he'd just delivered something that was about to turn both their worlds upside down. If you're watching from your city, New York, LA, Chicago, Houston, anywhere, drop a comment and hit that like button so I know how far this story travels. Let's go. The rain came down in sheets that morning, the kind that turned Seattle's streets into rivers and made anyone question every decision that led them outside. Logan sat in his 2004 Honda with the check engine light glowing like a judgmental eye, staring at the delivery app on his cracked phone screen. $42 for the day. Lily's daycare bill was due Friday. The math didn't work. It never did. One more, he muttered, accepting the ping before he could think about it. Bouquet delivery. Downtown, $15 payout. The address made his stomach drop. Voss Tower, the needle of black glass that stuck out of the skyline like a middle finger to everyone who couldn't afford to be inside it. He picked up the flowers from a boutique where the woman behind the counter handed them over without making eye contact, like he might contaminate the merchandise. 24 white roses, wrapped in silk that probably cost more than his rent. The card was tucked inside a cream envelope with a wax seal. Fancy. Old money fancy. The drive downtown took 20 minutes through traffic that moved like sludge. He parked in a loading zone because the garage wanted $18 an hour and pulled his hood up, cradling the bouquet like it might shatter. The rain soaked through his jacket before he made it 10 feet. Voss Tower's lobby was all white marble and recessed lighting, the kind of space designed to make people feel small. Logan dripped onto the floor, leaving a trail like a crime scene. The security guard behind the desk looked up, and his expression shifted from bored to annoyed in half a second. "Delivery entrance is around back," he said, not bothering to hide his disdain. "It says front desk delivery." Logan held up his phone, showing him the instructions. He exhaled through his nose like Logan had just ruined his whole day. "Name? Logan Reed." "Not you. Who's it for?" "Elena Voss." That got his attention. He straightened up, suddenly less certain. "Ms. Voss doesn't accept deliveries here." "Well, someone paid a lot of money for these to get here, so maybe you should check." He didn't like that. His hand moved toward the phone, but before he could pick it up, the elevator doors across the lobby opened and a woman stepped out. Logan knew who she was before anyone said a word. You don't live in Seattle without seeing Elena Voss's face on a magazine cover or a billboard. 30 years old, CEO of Voss Dynamics, the tech company her father had built, and she'd turned into something twice as dangerous. She wore a charcoal suit that probably cost more than Logan's car, her dark hair pulled back tight, her expression carved from stone. She stopped mid-stride when she saw him. Not because he looked impressive. He didn't. He looked like a drowned rat holding flowers. But something about the scene made her pause. "Ms. Voss," the guard stammered, suddenly nervous. "This man, he says he has a delivery for you, but I was just—" "It's fine, Marcus." Her voice was clipped, efficient. She crossed the lobby, toward Logan, heels clicking like countdown timers. "You're from the service?" "Yeah, Logan Reed." He held out the bouquet, water dripping off his sleeve onto the silk wrapping. She didn't take it immediately. Her eyes moved from the flowers to his face, and he felt the full weight of her assessment. It wasn't kind. It wasn't curious. It was the look you give something that doesn't belong. "Who sent them?" she asked. "I don't know. I just deliver." "There's a card." "I don't read people's mail." Her mouth twitched, almost a smile, but not quite. She took the bouquet carefully, like it might explode, and pulled the envelope free. The wax seal cracked under her thumb. She read the card in silence, and Logan watched her face do something he didn't expect. It went pale. Not just surprised, shaken. The lobby felt too quiet. "Where did you pick this up?" Her voice had changed, sharper now, almost urgent. "Boutique on Pine." Lady didn't say much. "What lady?" "I don't know. She worked there." "Blonde, 40-something. Didn't give me her life story. Elena stared at the card again, her jaw tight. For a long moment, she didn't move. Then she looked at Logan, really looked at him, and something in her expression shifted. "You're wet," she said. "It's raining. Come upstairs." He blinked. "What? You delivered the flowers. I'm signing for them. Come upstairs so I can do that properly." It wasn't a request. She was already walking toward the elevator. Marcus the guard looked like he'd swallowed his tongue. Logan glanced at him, shrugged, and followed her. The elevator was the kind with a mirror on every wall, which meant Logan got to see exactly how out of place he looked from 4 different angles. Elena stood beside him, still holding the bouquet, still staring at that card like it was a bomb she couldn't defuse. "You work for them often?" she asked without looking at him. "The delivery app? Yeah, when I can. That's not a career. It's what pays the bills." "Does it?" Logan didn't answer that. The elevator doors opened onto the 42nd floor, and she led him down a hall with floor-to-ceiling windows that overlooked the city. Rain streaked the glass. They passed a conference room where 3 people in suits were mid-argument, their voices muffled behind soundproof walls. Her office was at the end of the hall. It was massive, bigger than Logan's apartment. One wall was all glass. Her desk was black lacquer, pristine except for a laptop and a single-framed photo he couldn't see clearly from where he stood. She set the flowers on the desk and turned to face him. "Sit." "I should get going." "Sit down, Logan." The way she said his name made him sit. There was a leather chair across from her desk, and he lowered himself into it, still dripping. Elena pulled a bottle of water from a small fridge behind her desk and handed it to him without comment. Then she sat down, folded her hands, and stared at the card again. "Do you know what this says?" she asked quietly. "No." "It says, 'You owe him everything. Don't forget.'" Logan waited. She didn't elaborate. "That means something to you?" he asked carefully. Her eyes flicked up to his. "It means someone knows something they shouldn't." She paused. "It also means you're involved now, whether you like it or not. I'm just the delivery guy." "No." She leaned forward, and her gaze locked onto him like a searchlight. "You're more than that. I just don't know how yet." That should have been his cue to leave, to stand up, thank her for the water, and get the hell out of there before whatever mess she was tangled in became his problem. But Logan didn't move. Maybe it was the way she looked at him, like he was a puzzle she needed to solve. Maybe it was the fact that he'd been invisible to people like her his whole life. And suddenly, he wasn't. "Tell me about the night you helped someone," she said. His stomach dropped. "What?" "4 years ago, May 14th. You were working late. You stopped to help someone. Tell me about it." The room tilted. Logan hadn't thought about that night in years. It wasn't something he talked about. It wasn't even something he remembered most days. "How do you—" "Tell me." He exhaled slowly, trying to piece it together. "I was driving for a rideshare company back then. Late shift. Got a ping near Capitol Hill. When I pulled up, there was a guy on the curb, messed up bad. Bleeding. His friend was trying to flag down cars, but everyone kept driving past. What did you do?" "I stopped. Got him in my car, took him to the ER." "You didn't call an ambulance?" "He didn't have insurance. Ambulance would have bankrupted him. I figured I could at least get him there." Elena's expression didn't change, but something in her eyes softened. "Did you know who he was?" "No, just some guy who needed help." "His name was David Collier." The name hit Logan like cold water. David Collier. He knew that name now. Everyone in Seattle did. He'd been a city councilman, the rising star who'd pushed through housing reform before dying in a car accident 2 years ago. But 4 years ago, he'd just been a stranger bleeding on a sidewalk. "He was my mentor," Elena said quietly. "He was the reason I stayed in Seattle instead of leaving after my father died. He was the person who told me I could run this company, and you saved his life." Logan didn't know what to say to that. "He never forgot," she continued. "He told me about you once. The driver who didn't ask questions, who didn't ask for money, who just did the right thing because it needed doing." She tapped the card. "This is his handwriting. He left instructions before he died. If anything ever happened to him, if I ever needed to remember what mattered, someone was supposed to send me this." "I don't understand." "Neither do I, not yet." She stood pacing to the window. "But someone thinks you're important. Someone thinks I need to pay attention to you, and given what's happening right now, I'm inclined to listen. What's happening right now? She turned to face him, and for the first time, Logan saw something other than control in her expression. He saw fear. I'm about to sign a deal that could destroy everything my father built, she said. And I can't figure out if I'm making the right choice or walking into a trap. The rain pounded against the glass. Somewhere below, the city kept moving, oblivious. Why are you telling me this? Logan asked. Because 4 years ago, you made a choice without thinking about what it would cost you. You saw someone who needed help, and you helped them. That's not something people do in my world. We calculate. We measure risk. We protect ourselves first. She crossed her arms. Maybe that's the problem. Logan stood up slowly, setting the water bottle on the edge of her desk. Look, I appreciate the trip down memory lane, but I've got to pick up my daughter in an hour, and I'm still 12 deliveries short of making rent this week. Whatever this is, I can't afford to be part of it. How much do you need? Excuse me? For rent. How much? He stared at her. Are you seriously trying to pay me off right now? I'm trying to keep you here long enough to figure out what I'm missing. That's not how this works. Then how does it work, Logan? Her voice rose, frustration bleeding through. Because from where I'm standing, you walked into my building, handed me a message from a dead man, and now you're acting like none of this matters. It doesn't matter, not to me. I don't know you. I didn't know David Collier. I did a decent thing once, and that's it. It doesn't make me special. It doesn't make me your answer. She flinched like he'd slapped her. Logan softened his tone. Look, whatever you're dealing with, this deal, this pressure, you don't need some random delivery driver to fix it. You're Elena Voss. You've got advisors, lawyers, people who actually know what they're doing. I'm just trying to keep my kid fed. Your daughter, she said quietly. What's her name? Lily. How old? 6. She nodded slowly, and for a moment the CEO mask slipped completely. She just looked tired. I had a daughter once, for about 6 hours. The air left the room. She didn't make it, Elena continued, her voice flat. Premature. Complications. They let me hold her before... She stopped, shook her head. That was 5 years ago. Different life, different version of me. Logan didn't know what to say. There were no words for that. I'm sorry, he managed. Don't be. It taught me something important. She looked at him. It taught me that control is an illusion, that no matter how much money you have, how much power, there are things you can't fix, things you can't buy your way out of. She gestured to the flowers. David knew that. He told me once that the only things that matter are the choices we make when no one's watching, when there's no reward, no recognition. She paused. You made that choice. I want to understand why. Because it was right. That's not enough. It is for me. She studied him for a long time, and Logan felt the weight of it. This woman who could buy and sell his entire existence without blinking, trying to figure out if he was real or just another angle. Finally, she said, Stay for 1 hour. Sit in on a meeting. Just listen. If you still want to leave after that, I'll pay you $1,000 for your time and you never have to see me again. 1,000... 1 hour, Logan, that's all I'm asking. He thought about Lily, about the daycare bill, about the stack of past due notices on his kitchen counter. 1 hour, he said. She smiled, and it was the first genuine expression he'd seen on her face. Thank you. The conference room was all glass and steel, with a table long enough to seat 20. When Elena and Logan walked in, the conversation stopped cold. 6 people sat around the table, all of them dressed like they'd stepped out of a boardroom catalog. They looked at Logan the way you'd look at a stray dog that wandered into a wedding. This is Logan Reed, Elena said smoothly, taking her seat at the head of the table. He'll be observing today's discussion. A man in his 50s with silver hair and a jaw like a hammer spoke first. Elena, we're about to finalize the North Point acquisition. This isn't exactly the time for... Richard, I don't recall asking your opinion on who I bring into my own meetings. Her voice could have cut glass. Richard's mouth snapped shut, but his eyes stayed on Logan, cold and calculating. Logan took a seat near the back, trying to make himself invisible. Elena didn't look at him again. She opened her laptop and the room's energy shifted to business mode. Let's begin, she said. James, walk us through the updated terms. A younger man in tortoiseshell glasses pulled up a presentation on the wall screen. Numbers filled the display: revenue projections, asset valuations, integration timelines. Logan didn't understand half of it, but he recognized the rhythm. This was a sale. Voss Dynamics was buying another company. Northpoint Technologies has agreed to our offer, James said. $12 billion, all cash. Their AI division folds into ours, and we gain access to proprietary datasets that put us 3 years ahead of the competition. What's the catch? Elena asked. James hesitated. No catch. It's a clean deal. Nothing's ever clean, James. What aren't you telling me? A woman across the table, sharp-featured, mid-40s, wearing red like war paint, leaned forward. The catch is that Marcus Chen retains operational control of the AI division for 5 years, non-negotiable. Elena's expression didn't change. And why would I agree to that? Because without Chen, the division falls apart, the woman said. He built it. His people are loyal to him. We force him out, we lose half the talent. Or, Richard interjected, we integrate slowly, offer retention bonuses, standard acquisition protocol. That takes time we don't have, James countered. If we don't move now, Harrison Tech will. They've been circling Northpoint for months. The argument picked up speed, voices overlapping. Logan sat there trying to follow, but his attention kept drifting to Elena. She wasn't arguing. She was watching, listening. Her fingers drummed once against the table, a tell she probably didn't know she had. Elena, Richard's voice cut through the noise. We need a decision. The board meets tomorrow. If you're not ready to sign, we need to know now. She didn't answer immediately. Her eyes moved across the screen, scanning numbers, and then, just for a second, they flicked to Logan. He didn't know what she saw. Maybe nothing. Maybe she was just checking if he was still awake. But something in that glance felt like a question. Logan looked back at the screen, at the numbers, at the projection that showed Northpoint's revenue spiking in year 3. And he saw it. It wasn't obvious. It was barely there. But the growth curve didn't match the rest of the data. It jumped too fast with no corresponding increase in operating costs or headcount. It was the kind of thing you'd miss if you were looking at the big picture. But Logan had spent years balancing his own books on a shoestring budget, and he knew what fudged numbers looked like. He raised his hand. The room went silent. Yes, Logan? Elena's tone was neutral, but he saw the flicker of curiosity. Can I ask a question? Richard groaned audibly. Elena, this is absurd. Go ahead, she said, ignoring him. Logan pointed at the screen. That spike in year 3. What's driving it? James blinked. Projected market expansion. Northpoint's tech scales rapidly once integrated. But your operating costs don't change. You're saying revenue doubles, but you don't hire anyone, don't increase infrastructure? Efficiency gains, James said smoothly. Automation. That's not automation, that's fantasy. The room erupted. Richard started shouting about wasted time. The woman in red looked at Logan like he'd just insulted her mother. But Elena leaned back in her chair, and a slow, dangerous smile spread across her face. Show him the full breakdown, she said quietly. Elena, we don't have time for... Show him. James exhaled sharply and pulled up a new screen. More numbers, more charts. Logan stood and walked closer, ignoring the death stares. The data was dense, but the problem was right there, buried in footnotes, explained away with jargon, but visible if you cared to look. This assumes a client retention rate of 95%, Logan said, pointing. But Northpoint's current retention is 72. Where's the 30-point jump coming from? Client confidence in the merged entity, James said tightly, or cooked books. The room exploded. Richard stood, his face red. Who the hell do you think you are? You walk in off the street and accuse us of... I'm not accusing you, Logan said, keeping his voice level. I'm asking where the numbers come from. If this deal's solid, you should be able to answer that. Logan, sit down, the woman in red snapped. No, Elena said, standing. He's right. James, pull the source data, all of it. I want to see Northpoint's raw client metrics. That'll take hours. Then you'd better get started. James looked at Richard. Richard looked at the woman in red. And in that moment, Logan saw it. The thing Elena had been afraid of. They weren't surprised by his question. They were panicking. There's no problem with the data, Richard said carefully. Logan's overreacting. Then prove it, Elena said. Richard stood. I don't think this is prove it or I kill the deal right now. The silence that followed was absolute. Finally, Richard said, Fine, we'll review the data, but this is a waste of time. Meeting adjourned, Elena said. Everyone out, except Logan. They filed out slowly, throwing glances at Logan that ranged from confusion to outright hatred. When the door closed, Elena walked to the window and stared out at the rain. You just made some very powerful people very angry, she said. I didn't mean to. Yes, you did. She turned to face him. You saw something they hoped I wouldn't see, and now they know I'm looking. What do you think they're hiding? I don't know yet, but I intend to find out. She crossed her arms. You're good at this. At what? Seen through the noise. Most people in that room have business degrees from schools that cost more than your car, but they're so focused on the strategy, the optics, the positioning, they miss the basics. You didn't. I just know what bad math looks like. It's more than that. She hesitated. You care about getting it right, not about looking smart. That's rare. Logan didn't know what to say to that. She walked back to the table and sat down, suddenly looking exhausted. David used to tell me that the best decisions come from people who have something to lose, people who understand consequences because they live them every day. I never understood what he meant until now. What are you going to do? Logan asked. I'm going to dig until I find the truth. And if Richard and his team are lying to me, I'm going to burn them down. She looked at him. Your hour's up. You can leave if you want. Logan should have. Every rational part of his brain screamed at him to walk out, take the money, and forget this whole day ever happened. But he thought about Lily, about the world she was growing up in, about the Elena Vosses and Richard Harpers who made decisions that shaped her future without ever having to live with the consequences. I'll stay, he said. Elena smiled. Good, because I'm not done with you yet. The hours that followed felt like being strapped to a rocket Logan didn't know how to steer. Elena handed him off to a woman named Sarah Chen, no relation to the Marcus Chen from North Point, she clarified immediately, who worked in forensic accounting. Sarah had the kind of face that looked permanently skeptical, like she'd been lied to so many times she'd stopped expecting honesty. You're the delivery guy, she said flatly when Logan walked into her office. That's what my jacket says. And you just called out our entire acquisitions team in front of the CEO. I pointed out some weird numbers, that's all. She snorted. Kid, you just kicked a hornet's nest. You better hope you're right, because if you're wrong, Richard Harper's going to make sure you never work in this city again. I don't work in this city now. I drive for an app. Smart ass. But she almost smiled. Sit down. Let's see if you've got anything besides instinct. Sarah pulled up North Point's financial records on 3 monitors that covered half her desk. The data came at Logan like a fire hose. Revenue streams, client contracts, licensing agreements, subsidiary holdings. She walked him through it methodically, explaining the structure of the deal, the valuation model, the due diligence process that should have caught any major red flags. But it didn't, Logan said. No, it didn't. She leaned back in her chair, arms crossed, which means either we're all incompetent or someone buried the problems deep enough that we weren't supposed to find them. You think someone on your team's dirty? I think someone on the North Point side is lying, and someone on our side didn't push hard enough to call them on it. Whether that's incompetence or conspiracy, I don't know yet. She pointed at the screen. Look at this. Client retention projections. James said 95%, right? Yeah. North Point's actual retention over the last 3 years averages 68%. Not 72 like you said, but close enough. Somebody inflated the numbers for the projection model. That's fraud. Basic, stupid fraud. So why didn't anyone catch it? Because the people reviewing this deal aren't looking at the boring stuff. They're focused on market position, competitive advantage, strategic alignment, all the buzzwords that make them feel smart. They trust the analysts to catch the technical errors. She tapped the screen. But the analysts report to Richard, and Richard really wants this deal to go through. Why? Sarah hesitated. Elena's father built this company from nothing. When he died, she inherited it, but she also inherited his board. Most of them guys he trusted, guys who'd been with him for decades. Richard was his CFO, practically family. But Elena's not her father. She's sharper, more aggressive, willing to take risks he never would have touched. That scares people like Richard. They want stability, predictability, control. And this deal gives them that? If it goes through, Marcus Chen runs the AI division for 5 years. That's the crown jewel of the company. The part that's growing fastest, the part that makes all the headlines. Elena loses control of it. She's still CEO in name, but Richard and his faction get the real power. Sarah met his eyes. This isn't just a bad deal, it's a coup. The word hung in the air between them. Does Elena know? Logan asked. She suspects. Why do you think she dragged you into that meeting? She needed someone who wasn't part of the machine. Someone who'd call it like they saw it without worrying about internal politics. I'm not qualified for this. You were qualified enough to spot what everyone else missed. That counts. She turned back to the monitors. Now, let's figure out how deep this goes. They worked through lunch. Sarah ordered sandwiches that showed up in bags, with the kind of branding that meant they cost more than Logan's usual dinner. He texted Lily's daycare to let them know he'd be late picking her up, and they charged him an extra $20 for extended care that he didn't have. Elena must have seen the transaction, because 10 minutes later Sarah handed Logan $200 in cash without explanation. She said to cover expenses, Sarah said. I didn't ask for e... She doesn't care. Take it. He took it. By mid-afternoon, they'd built a case. The client retention numbers were fabricated. The revenue projections were built on assumptions that didn't match Northpoint's actual performance. The integration timeline ignored obvious technical incompatibilities between the two companies' systems. And beneath it all, buried in subsidiary filings and licensing agreements, they found the real poison pill, a clause that gave Marcus Chen veto power over any major strategic decisions in the AI division, effectively making him untouchable. Jesus, Sarah muttered, highlighting the clause. This isn't an acquisition. It's a hostile takeover dressed up as a partnership. Can Elena kill it? She can try. But this board meets tomorrow. If they vote to approve, her options shrink fast. She'd have to fight them publicly, and that gets ugly. Sarah rubbed her eyes. Richard's been positioning this for months. He's got the votes lined up, the narrative ready. If Elena backs out now, he'll make her look weak, indecisive, bad for the company. But if she signs, she loses everything that matters. Yeah. The door opened behind them. Elena walked in, still wearing the same suit from this morning, though she'd ditched the jacket. She looked wired, like she'd been running on caffeine and adrenaline for hours. Show me, she said. Sarah spun the monitors toward her. Elena read in silence, her expression unreadable. When she finished, she pulled out her phone and made a call. Richard, my office, 10 minutes. She hung up before he could answer. Elena? Sarah started. I'm not signing tomorrow, Elena said. I don't care what it costs me. This deal's dead. If you kill it without the board's approval, they'll move against you. Richard's been waiting for an excuse. Let him try. Elena's voice was ice. Logan, you're coming with me. Why? Because you're the only person in this building I trust right now. They walked back to her office in silence. The rain had stopped, but the sky was still bruised and swollen. Through the windows, the city looked gray and tired, like it had given up pretending to be beautiful. Richard was already waiting outside Elena's office when they arrived. He wasn't alone. The woman in red from the morning meeting stood beside him, along with James and 2 other executives Logan didn't recognize. They looked like a firing squad. Elena, Richard said, his voice carefully controlled. We need to talk about this morning's disruption. Good. Let's talk. Elena unlocked her office door and gestured them inside. All of you, now. They filed in, their expressions ranging from annoyed to openly hostile. Logan stayed near the door, trying to blend into the furniture. Elena sat behind her desk, calm and centered, while Richard and his group formed a semicircle in front of her like they were preparing for battle. I've reviewed the Northpoint data, Elena began. The numbers don't hold up. Client retention is inflated by nearly 30 points. Revenue projections are built on fairy tales, and the operational control clause gives Marcus Chen effective veto power over our entire AI strategy. Those are minor technical issues, Richard said dismissively. Every deal has wrinkles. That's what integration teams are for. These aren't wrinkles. They're structural flaws. Intentional ones. That's a serious accusation. Then prove me wrong. Show me clean data. Show me how this deal benefits Voss Dynamics instead of just protecting your position. Richard's jaw tightened. My position? Elena, I've been with this company since before you were born. Everything I've done has been to protect your father's legacy. My father's dead. This is my company now, and I'm not signing a deal that strips me of control. The woman in red stepped forward. If you kill this deal, Harrison Tech will acquire North Point within a month. They'll have a 3-year head start in AI development. We'll be playing catch-up for a decade. Then we find another way to compete. We build instead of buy. We take the risk. That's not sustainable, James said. The market moves too fast. We need North Point's infrastructure. We need honesty more, Elena shot back. And I'm not seeing any in this room. Richard's mask slipped. You're making a mistake. The board will not support this decision. The board works for the shareholders. I'm the majority shareholder. They'll do what I tell them. That's not how this works, Elena. You're young. You're brilliant. But you don't have your father's instincts. He understood that leadership sometimes means making deals you don't love for outcomes you need. He also taught me to recognize when someone's lying to my face. The temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. Richard stared at her, and for the first time, Logan saw real anger behind his polished exterior. If you insist on this path, he said slowly, I'll have no choice but to recommend your removal to the board. You're acting erratically, making accusations without evidence, bringing unqualified strangers into sensitive discussions. He gestured at Logan. This isn't leadership, it's paranoia. Then recommend it, Elena said quietly. Do what you think you need to do, but I'm not signing tomorrow. This conversation is over. Richard held her gaze for a long moment, then turned and walked out. The others followed, except for James, who lingered near the door. For what it's worth, he said quietly, I didn't know the data was cooked. I just ran the models I was given. Then you're incompetent or complicit, Elena said. Either way, you're done here. Clean out your desk. James flinched like she'd hit him. Then he nodded once and left. The door closed. Elena sat very still, staring at nothing. Logan stayed quiet, not sure if he should say something or just disappear. My father trusted Richard for 30 years, she finally said, treated him like a brother. And he's been planning to gut this company the whole time. You don't know that, Logan said carefully. Maybe he really believes this deal's good for you. No, he believes it's good for him. There's a difference. She looked at Logan, and he saw exhaustion in her eyes. Do you know what the worst part is? I'm not even surprised. I knew something was wrong. I felt it for months, but I ignored it because I didn't want to believe the people around me were capable of this. People surprise you, usually not in good ways. You sound like you've got experience with that. Logan thought about Lily's mother, about the promises she'd made before she left, about the hole she'd punched through their lives that never quite healed. Yeah, he said. I've got experience. Elena stood and walked to the window. The city was starting to light up as evening crept in, thousands of windows glowing against the dark. What do you do when everyone you're supposed to trust lets you down? You figure out who you can trust, and you hold on to them hard. And if there's no one, then you start over. Build something new. It's not easy, but it's better than living in a lie. She turned to face him. Is that what you did? After your daughter's mother left? Logan hadn't told her that. She must have had someone dig into his background while he was working with Sarah. He should have been angry, but he was too tired. Yeah, he said. That's what I did. Some days it works, some days it doesn't. But you keep going. I don't have a choice. Lily needs me to keep going. Elena nodded slowly. I used to think strength was about control, about managing every variable, anticipating every threat, staying 3 steps ahead. But that's not strength. That's just fear dressed up as strategy. What do you think strength is now? I don't know yet, but I think it has something to do with the choice you made 4 years ago. Helping someone because it was right, not because it benefited you. She paused. I want to make choices like that. I'm just not sure I know how anymore. You're doing it right now. Killing that deal, standing up to Richard, that's the choice. It might cost me everything. Then you'll figure out what comes next. Same as everyone else. She smiled faintly. You're remarkably calm for someone who just helped blow up a $12 billion acquisition. I've had worse days. I doubt that. Logan's phone buzzed, a text from the daycare. They were closing in 20 minutes. He needed to move. "I have to go," he said. "Lily's waiting." "Of course." Elena walked to her desk and pulled out a checkbook. She wrote quickly, tore off the check, and handed it to Logan. "For your time and your insight." He looked at the number, $5,000. "This is too much," he said. "It's not enough. You just saved this company from a disaster we created for ourselves. Take it, please." Logan folded the check and put it in his pocket. It felt like holding a live grenade. "What happens now?" "I call an emergency board meeting. I present the evidence. I force a vote. And then I find out who's really on my side." She met his eyes. "Will you come back tomorrow? For the meeting? I'm not part of this world, Elena. I don't belong in rooms like that." "Maybe that's exactly why you need to be there." Logan thought about Lily, about the life he was trying to build for her, about the risks that came with getting tangled up in someone else's war. But he also thought about David Collier, bleeding on a sidewalk, and the choice he'd made without thinking, the choice that somehow led him here. "What time?" he asked. 9 a.m. Wear something clean. Richard will try to use your appearance against you." "I don't own a suit." "Then we'll fix that tonight. There's a tailor 2 blocks from here. He owes me a favor." "Elena." "Logan, please, let me do this. You've already given me more than you know. Let me give you something back." He wanted to argue, to tell her he didn't need charity. But the truth was, he did need it. And there was something in her expression, something fragile and hopeful, that made him think she needed to give it as much as he needed to receive it. "Okay," he said, "but I'm paying you back." "We'll see." She made a call, and 30 minutes later Logan was standing in a shop that smelled like expensive fabric and old wood, while a man with silver hair and measuring tape draped him in charcoal wool. Elena sat in a leather chair nearby, answering emails on her phone while the tailor muttered in Italian and pinned the jacket to fit Logan's frame. "You're broader through the shoulders than I expected," the tailor said. "Construction work?" "Used to be, before my daughter was born." "Good. Honest work." He stood back, examining his adjustments. "This will be ready by 7 a.m. I'll have it delivered to Ms. Voss's office." "Thank you, Marco," Elena said without looking up from her phone. When they left the shop, the city had fully shifted into night mode. Streetlights reflected off wet pavement, and the air smelled like rain and exhaust. Elena's car was waiting at the curb, a black sedan with a driver who looked like he could double as security. "I'll drop you wherever you need to go," Elena said. "My car's back at your building." "Then we'll get your car. But I'm following you home to make sure you get there safe." "I've been getting home safe for 32 years. Humor me. Richard knows who you are now. He knows you're a threat. I don't trust him not to do something stupid." That thought hadn't occurred to Logan, and the fact that it occurred to her said a lot about the world she lived in. They drove back to Voss Tower in silence. Logan's Honda looked even sadder parked next to her sedan, the check engine light greeting him like an old nemesis. Elena rolled down her window as he got in. "Where do you live?" she asked. "Northgate, off 5th. "I'll follow. Don't try to lose me." Wasn't planning on it. The drive took 40 minutes through traffic that had thinned but not disappeared. Logan kept checking his mirror, watching her headlights trail behind him like a shadow. It felt surreal. Elena Voss, billionaire CEO, following a delivery driver through the working-class neighborhoods north of the city. When Logan pulled up to his apartment complex, a sagging 2-story walk-up with paint peeling off the siding, he half expected her to keep driving, but she parked behind him and got out. "You don't need to he started. "I want to meet her," Elena said. "Your daughter, if that's okay." Logan hesitated. Bringing Elena into his life felt like crossing a line he couldn't uncross, but she'd already paid for a suit he couldn't afford and handed him a check that would cover 3 months of rent. The line was already crossed. "Yeah," he said. "Okay." They walked up the exterior stairs to the 2nd floor. The hallway smelled like someone's cooking, garlic, and something fried. Logan unlocked the door to apartment 2C and stepped inside. The living room was small and cluttered, dominated by Lily's toys and drawings scattered across every surface. The furniture was thrift store mismatched. The TV was older than Lily, but it was clean and it was theirs. "Daddy!" Lily came running from her bedroom, still wearing her daycare clothes. purple leggings, and a shirt with a cartoon dinosaur. She crashed into Logan's legs, and he scooped her up. "Hey, Bug, how was your day?" "We made volcanoes with baking soda and it exploded everywhere, and Miss Jen said I was very scientific." "That's because you are very scientific." She noticed Elena standing in the doorway and went shy, burying her face against Logan's shoulder. "Lily, this is my friend Elena," Logan said. "Elena, this is Lily." Elena stepped forward slowly like she was approaching something fragile. "Hi, Lily. Your dad's told me a lot about you." Lily peeked out. "Are you a princess?" Elena laughed, a real laugh, the first Logan had heard from her. "No, I'm definitely not a princess." "You look like one. You have fancy clothes." "Well, thank you. I like your dinosaur shirt. His name is Rex. He eats bad guys." "That sounds very useful." Lily warmed up after that. She showed Elena her drawings, mostly abstract swirls of color, with stick figures she claimed were Logan and her. Elena sat on the floor, genuinely interested, asking questions about each one. Logan went to the kitchen and started dinner, keeping one eye on them while he boiled pasta and heated sauce from a jar. "Your daddy says you're very smart," Elena said. "I can read chapter books," Lily announced proudly. "And I know all my times tables up to 5. "That's impressive. I didn't learn my times tables until I was 8. "Really?" "Really. You're ahead of where I was." Lily beamed. Then, with the bluntness only 6-year-olds can manage, she asked, "Why are you here?" Elena glanced at Logan, then back at Lily. "Your dad helped me with something important today. I wanted to say thank you." "Did you pay him?" "Lily," Logan started. "It's okay," Elena said. "Yes, I paid him. Is that all right with you?" Lily considered this seriously. "Okay, but he's not for sale. He's my dad." "I know, and he's very good at being your dad." Something in Elena's expression shifted when she said that, a flicker of pain so quick Logan almost missed it, but Lily saw it too, in the way kids somehow always do. "Are you sad?" Lily asked. "A little," Elena admitted. "Do you want to have dinner with us? Food makes people less sad." Elena looked at Logan. He shrugged. "She's not wrong. I would love that," Elena said quietly. They ate at the cramped kitchen table, pasta with jar sauce, garlic bread from the freezer, water in mismatched glasses. Elena asked Lily about school, about her friends, about the books she was reading. Lily talked non-stop, the way she did when she was excited, and Elena listened like every word mattered. After dinner, Lily insisted on showing Elena her bedroom, the drawings on the walls, the stuffed animals arranged on her bed, the library books stacked on her nightstand. Elena knelt down to look at everything, taking it in like she was studying a museum. "This is wonderful," she said. "You've made it very cozy." "Cozy means safe," Lily said. "Daddy taught me that." Elena's eyes met Logan's across the room. "Your daddy's very smart." When Lily finally wound down, Logan carried her through her bedtime routine, teeth brushing, pajamas, story time. Elena waited in the living room, looking at the photos on the wall. Most were of Lily at different ages. A few were of Logan and her together. None included her mother. "She's beautiful," Elena said when Logan came back out. "You're doing an amazing job with her. I'm doing my best. Some days that's not much. It's everything." She turned to face him. "Thank you for letting me meet her. I didn't realize how much I needed that." "She liked you. That's rare. She doesn't trust new people easily." "Smart kid." Elena picked up her purse. "I should go. You both need rest. Tomorrow's going to be hard." Logan walked her to the door. She paused on the threshold, looking back at the small apartment like she was memorizing it. "Logan, can I ask you something?" "Yeah. Do you ever regret it? The choices you made, raising her alone, giving up whatever future you might have had?" Logan thought about that. About the college degree he'd dropped out to afford when he found out he was going to be a father. About the career he'd never started. The dreams he'd shelved, the life he'd imagined that never materialized. "No," he said. "I don't regret her, not for a second. Everything else, yeah, maybe, but not her." Elena nodded. "I believe you, and I think that's the difference between us. You know what matters? I'm still trying to figure it out." "You'll get there." "I hope so." She stepped into the hallway, then turned back. 9 a.m. Don't be late. I'll be there. Logan watched her walk down the stairs, her driver meeting her at the bottom. The sedan pulled away, and he stood there for a while trying to process the fact that Elena Voss had just eaten freezer garlic bread at his kitchen table and listened to his daughter talk about dinosaurs. His phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Thank you for tonight. You reminded me what I'm fighting for. E. Logan saved the number and went back inside. Lily was already asleep, sprawled across her bed with a stuffed elephant clutched to her chest. He pulled the blanket over her and stood there watching her breathe, the way he did most nights when the weight of everything got too heavy. Tomorrow he'd walk into a boardroom full of people who'd spent their whole lives learning how to destroy each other with smiles on their faces. He'd be wearing a suit he didn't pay for, defending a woman he barely knew, in a fight that wasn't his. But when he thought about the look on Elena's face when Lily asked if she wanted to stay for dinner, the way her mask had cracked just enough to show the person underneath, he knew he'd made the right choice. Some things were worth the risk, even if you couldn't see the ending, even if the math didn't work. Logan turned off the light and closed Lily's door, already planning what he'd say tomorrow when Richard Harper tried to tear him apart. The suit fit better than anything Logan had ever worn. When Marco's assistant delivered it at 7:30 in the morning, he almost didn't recognize himself in the mirror. The charcoal fabric sat perfectly across his shoulders, the pants broke at exactly the right length, and the white shirt underneath made him look like someone who belonged in rooms where decisions worth billions got made. He hated how good it felt. Lily watched him from her bed, still groggy from sleep. You look different, Daddy. Different good or different bad? Just different, like you're pretending to be someone else. Out of the mouths of kids, Logan knelt down beside her bed. I have to go to an important meeting this morning. Mrs. Patterson's going to take you to school, okay? Mrs. Patterson was their neighbor, a retired teacher who helped out when Logan's schedule went sideways. She charged him $20 a day, which he couldn't afford, but she always accepted payment late without complaint. Is it because of the princess lady? Lily asked. Her name's Elena, and yeah, it's because of her. Are you going to work for her now? I don't know, Bug. Maybe. We'll see what happens. I liked her. She listened to me. Most grown-ups don't really listen. Logan kissed her forehead. You're a good judge of people, better than me. That's because I pay attention. You taught me that. He smiled despite the knot tightening in his stomach. Be good for Mrs. Patterson. I'll pick you up after school. Okay. Daddy? Yeah? Don't let the mean people be mean to you. Logan had no idea how she knew there would be mean people, but she wasn't wrong. I'll try. The drive downtown felt like heading toward an execution. Traffic was lighter than yesterday, and Logan made it to Voss Tower by 8:40. The security guard, Marcus, nodded when he saw him, which was more respect than he'd gotten the day before. Ms. Voss is expecting you, he said. 42nd floor, conference room B. The elevator ride up gave Logan too much time to think about what he was walking into, about whether he'd made a massive mistake getting involved in something so far above his understanding, about the fact that less than 24 hours ago, he'd been a delivery driver nobody noticed, and now he was about to sit in a boardroom full of people who could end his life with a signature. The elevator doors opened. Elena was waiting in the hallway, wearing a navy suit that looked like armor. Her hair was pulled back so tight it must have hurt, and her expression was locked down to nothing. But when she saw Logan, something softened. You clean up well, she said. Marco knows his stuff. He's the best. That suit will last you 20 years if you take care of it. She glanced at her watch. We have 15 minutes before they arrive. Come with me. They walked to her office. Sarah Chen was already there, along with two other people Logan didn't recognize. A man in his 40s with wire-rimmed glasses, and a woman who looked barely 30 with red hair pulled into a bun. Logan, this is Thomas Kern, our general counsel, and Rebecca Isaacs, head of corporate strategy, Elena said. They've been reviewing the North Point data since midnight. Tom, Rebecca, this is Logan Reed. Thomas extended his hand. His grip was firm, but not aggressive. Elena tells me you're the one who spotted the problems in the acquisition model. I just asked questions, Logan said. The right questions. That's rarer than you'd think. He gestured to the conference table in Elena's office, where documents were spread out like evidence at a crime scene. We've confirmed everything you and Sarah flagged yesterday. The client retention numbers are fabricated. The revenue projections don't match historical performance. And the operational control clause is worse than we initially thought. How much worse? Elena asked. Rebecca spoke up, her voice crisp and professional. Marcus Chen doesn't just get veto power over AI division decisions. He gets a seat on the Voss Dynamics board, with voting rights, and a compensation package that includes stock options worth 8% of the company. 8%, Elena repeated slowly, which, combined with Richard's existing shares and the shares held by board members aligned with him, gives them effective control. You'd still be CEO, but every major decision would require their approval. Rebecca met Elena's eyes. This isn't an acquisition, it's a transfer of power. The room went quiet. Elena stood very still, her hands flat on the table. Logan could see her jaw working, the muscles in her neck tight. How did we miss this? She asked quietly. We didn't miss it, Thomas said. We were misdirected. The stock option clause was buried in an appendix to the employment agreement, cross-referenced with subsidiary filings that nobody had any reason to read closely. Whoever structured this deal knew exactly how to hide it. Richard, Elena said. Most likely. Though he had help. James in acquisitions, probably others. And the board doesn't know? Some of them do, some don't. The ones who do are betting you won't figure it out in time to stop it. Thomas leaned forward. Elena, if you go into that meeting and present this evidence, you're not just killing a deal. You're accusing half your board of conspiracy. They will fight back. Hard. Let them. They'll try to remove you. Call for a vote of no confidence. Claim you're unstable, paranoid, unfit to lead. On what grounds? On the grounds that you're making wild accusations without proof, disrupting a major acquisition at the last minute, and bringing unqualified outsiders into sensitive discussions. He glanced at Logan. No offense. None taken. He's not wrong. Elena turned to Logan. You understand what they're going to do to you in there. They'll attack your credibility, your background, your right to even be in the room. It won't be subtle, and it won't be fair. I figured. And you're still willing to do this? Logan thought about Lily, asking him not to let the mean people be mean to him, about David Collier, bleeding on a sidewalk, about the choice Elena was making right now, to fight instead of fold, even though folding would have been easier. Yeah, he said, I'm still willing. She nodded once. Then let's go burn it down. Conference room B was twice the size of the one they'd used yesterday. The table could seat 30, and today it was almost full. Board members filed in, most of them men in their 60s and 70s, a few women scattered among them. They wore expensive suits and carried themselves with the kind of confidence that came from never having to worry about money. Richard sat at the far end, flanked by his allies. When he saw Logan, his expression went cold. Elena took her seat at the head of the table. Logan sat 2 chairs down, trying to make himself invisible. Sarah, Thomas, and Rebecca sat across from him. The room smelled like coffee and old wood and something sharper, fear maybe, or just the residue of too many battles fought in this space. Thank you all for coming on short notice, Elena began. I know the original meeting was scheduled for this afternoon, but circumstances have changed. Elena, if this is about your concerns from yesterday, Richard started. It's not concerns, it's evidence. She nodded to Rebecca, who pulled up a presentation on the wall screen. Over the past 18 hours, my team has conducted a thorough review of the North Point acquisition. What we found is troubling. The first slide appeared, client retention data, actual versus projected. The gap was stark, impossible to miss. North Point's client retention rate has averaged 68% over the past 3 years, Rebecca said. The projection model used in our valuation assumed 95%. That's a 27-point inflation with no supporting evidence. A board member Logan didn't recognize leaned forward. Projections are always optimistic. That's standard practice. Not when they're used to justify a $12 billion purchase price, Thomas countered. This isn't optimism. It's fraud. The room erupted. Voices overlapped, some demanding proof, others defending the process. Richard sat perfectly still, watching Elena like a predator calculating angles. There's more, Elena said, cutting through the noise. The next slide appeared, the operational control clause. Marcus Chen's employment agreement gives him veto power over all AI division decisions. a board seat with voting rights, and stock options worth 8% of Voss Dynamics. The room went silent. Combined with existing board holdings, Elena continued, this gives Richard Harper and his aligned board members effective control of this company. I would remain CEO in name only. That's absurd, Richard said calmly. The stock options are a standard retention incentive. The board seat is ceremonial. You're reading malice into routine corporate structure. Deton. Routine structure doesn't get buried in appendices and cross-referenced across subsidiary filings. Routine structure doesn't require 3 lawyers working through the night to uncover. Elena's voice was ice. This was designed to be missed, and when I refused to miss it, you tried to push me into signing anyway. I tried to help you see the strategic value. You tried to steal my company. The words hung in the air like smoke. Richard's expression didn't change, but Logan saw the flash of something dangerous behind his eyes. That's a serious accusation, he said quietly. Do you have proof? Real proof, not just paranoid interpretation of standard contract language? Elena looked at Logan. It wasn't a request. It was a cue. Logan stood up, his heart hammering. Every eye in the room turned toward him, and he felt the weight of their judgment like physical pressure. My name is Logan Reed, he said, keeping his voice steady. I'm not a lawyer or a business analyst. I'm a delivery driver. Yesterday morning, I brought flowers to Ms. Voss's office, and she asked me to sit in on your acquisitions meeting. I'm the one who pointed out the problems in the North Point data. And we should trust your analysis. Why exactly? The woman in red, whose name Logan still didn't know, asked coldly. Because I don't have a stake in this. I don't benefit if the deal goes through or falls apart. I just looked at the numbers and asked if they made sense. With all due respect, Richard said, his tone dripping condescension, financial modeling is complex. It requires expertise, years of training. You can't simply look at a spreadsheet and declare it fraudulent. I didn't declare anything. I asked questions, like why revenue projections doubled with no increase in operating costs, why client retention jumped 30 points with no explanation, why integration timelines ignored obvious technical problems. Logan met his eyes. And instead of answering those questions, you tried to shut me down. You called me unqualified, disruptive. You told Ms. Voss I didn't belong in the room. Because you don't. Maybe. But if I'm so unqualified, it should have been easy to prove me wrong. Show me the data that supports your projections. Explain where the retention increase comes from. Walk me through the integration plan. Logan paused. But you didn't do that. You got angry. You tried to make this about me instead of about the numbers. And that tells me everything I need to know. The room was dead silent. Richard stared at Logan with open hatred now, the mask completely gone. You have no idea what you're talking about, he said. Then explain it to me, right now, in front of everyone. Logan gestured to the screen. Show us the source data for these projections. Prove they're legitimate. Richard's jaw tightened. He looked at James, who'd gone pale and wouldn't meet anyone's eyes. He looked at the woman in red, who was suddenly very interested in her phone. He looked at the other board members, gauging how many were still with him. This is a waste of time, Richard said finally. Elena, you're allowing yourself to be manipulated by someone who walked in off the street and convinced you to doubt the people who've been loyal to this company for decades. That's not leadership. That's weakness. Loyalty, Elena repeated. Is that what you call trying to strip me of control while pretending to help? I'm trying to protect this company from your inexperience. By handing it to Marcus Chen. By ensuring stability, continuity. Your father built this company on relationships and trust. You're tearing that apart because some delivery driver told you to. Elena stood, her hands flat on the table. My father also taught me to recognize when someone was lying to my face. And you've been lying for months, Richard. Maybe longer. I have dedicated 30 years of my life to Voss Dynamics. And now you're trying to take it for yourself. She looked around the room. I'm calling for a vote. The North Point acquisition is dead. Anyone who disagrees can vote to override me. But know this. If you side with Richard, I will fight you. I will audit every deal you've touched, investigate every decision you've made, and expose every lie you've told. This company is mine, and I'm not giving it up without a war. The threat landed like a bomb. Board members shifted in their seats, exchanging glances. Richard's face had gone red, a vein pulsing in his forehead. You're making a mistake, he said. Then it's my mistake to make. Vote. Thomas distributed ballots, physical paper, not electronic, to prevent tampering. The board members wrote in silence, folding their votes and passing them forward. Rebecca collected them, counted them twice, and handed the results to Elena. Elena read them without expression. Then she looked at Richard. 14-6. The acquisition is terminated, effective immediately. Richard stood slowly. This isn't over. Yes, it is. You're also terminated, effective immediately. Security will escort you out. You can't do that. The board just voted to kill your deal. Your credibility is gone. Your allies are abandoning you. Elena's voice was razor sharp. You have two choices. You can leave quietly with your severance package and your reputation mostly intact, or you can fight me, and I will destroy you so completely that no company in this city will touch you. Choose. Richard looked around the room, searching for support. He found none. The board members who'd voted with him were suddenly very interested in their phones or their notes or the view out the window. No one met his eyes. This company was nothing before I came here, Richard said quietly. Your father knew that. He needed me. My father's dead, and you're done. Elena nodded to the security guards who'd appeared at the door. Gentlemen, please escort Mr. Harper from the building. Make sure he takes nothing but his personal effects. Richard stared at her for a long moment, and Logan saw something break behind his eyes. Then he turned and walked out, flanked by security. The woman in red followed without a word. James had already disappeared. The remaining board members sat in stunned silence. Anyone else want to challenge my leadership? Elena asked calmly. No one spoke. Good. This meeting is adjourned. I'll expect full cooperation from each of you as we investigate how this deal got as far as it did. If anyone else was complicit, now would be a good time to come forward. Thomas will be handling the inquiry. I suggest you be honest with him. They filed out quickly, avoiding eye contact. Within 2 minutes, the room was empty except for Elena, Thomas, Sarah, Rebecca, and Logan. Elena sat down heavily, like someone had cut her strings. For a long moment, she didn't move. Then she looked at Logan. Thank you, she said quietly. I didn't do anything. You're the one who stood up to him. You gave me the ammunition and the courage. She smiled faintly. Although I'm not sure courage is the right word. Rage, maybe. Rage works, Sarah said. That was brutal. In a good way. Thomas was already on his phone, texting rapid fire. I'm freezing Richard's access to company systems. Rebecca, can you draft a press release? Something simple. Executive transition, strategic realignment. The usual corporate speak. On it, Rebecca said, already typing. Elena stood and walked to the window. The city spread out below them, oblivious to the small war that had just ended 42 floors up. What happens now? Logan asked. Now we figure out who else was involved. We audit the last 5 years of deals Richard touched. We rebuild the board with people I can actually trust. She turned to face Logan. And we figure out what comes next for you. I already told you. I know. You're a delivery driver. You have a daughter to take care of. You don't belong in this world. She crossed her arms. But what if you did? What if you could build something here? Elena, I don't have a business degree. I don't have connections or experience or... You have integrity. You see problems other people miss. You're willing to speak up when everyone else stays quiet. She paused. That's worth more than any degree. I appreciate the vote of confidence, but I can't just walk into a corporate job, not corporate, something else. She glanced at Thomas. We need someone to oversee operational audits, someone who's not part of the existing structure, someone who can look at our processes with fresh eyes and tell us what's broken. Thomas nodded slowly. That's actually not a bad idea. An independent operational consultant reports directly to you. No conflicts of interest. I'm not a consultant, Logan said. You weren't a forensic analyst yesterday either, but you performed like one, Sarah pointed out. This is insane. 24 hours ago, I was delivering flowers. And now you're not. Elena stepped closer. Logan, I'm not asking you to become someone you're not. I'm asking you to do what you did yesterday. Look at things honestly. Ask questions. Tell me the truth even when it's uncomfortable. That's all. What does it pay? $80,000 a year to start. Full benefits, flexible hours so you can pick up your daughter from school. The number hit Logan like a punch. $80,000. He'd never made more than 30 in a year, never had health insurance, never had anything resembling job security. That's too much, he said. It's market rate for the role. Actually, it's below market rate, but I'm assuming you'll want to prove yourself before we renegotiate. Logan looked at Sarah, at Thomas, at Rebecca. They were all watching him with expressions that ranged from curious to encouraging. None of them looked like they thought this was crazy. I need to think about it, he said. Take the weekend, Elena said. Come back Monday with your answer. But Logan, think hard, because this isn't charity. This is me offering you something you've earned. I'll think about it. She extended her hand. Logan shook it, and her grip was firm and steady. Whatever you decide, thank you for today, she said. You reminded me who I want to be. That's worth more than you know. Logan left Voss Tower in a daze, still wearing the suit Marco had made, his head full of numbers that didn't make sense. 80,000, benefits, flexible hours, a chance to build something instead of just surviving day to day. But also a chance to fail, to be exposed as the fraud Richard had called him, to lose everything if he couldn't deliver. He picked up Lily from school at 3:15. She was waiting on the steps with her backpack, talking to another girl about something involving unicorns. When she saw Logan, she ran over and grabbed his hand. You're wearing the fancy suit, she said. Yeah, still feels weird. Did the mean people be mean to you? They tried, but it worked out okay. Good. Can we get ice cream? Logan thought about the $5,000 check in his wallet that he still hadn't cashed, about the job offer sitting on the table, about the life that might be possible if he was willing to take the risk. Yeah, Bug, we can get ice cream. They went to the shop 2 blocks from their apartment, the one with the hand-painted sign and the owner who always gave Lily extra sprinkles. She got mint chip and a waffle cone. Logan got coffee and tried not to think about the decision he had to make. Daddy, can I ask you something? Lily said, chocolate already smeared on her chin. Always. Are we going to be okay? The question stopped Logan cold. What do you mean? I heard you talking to Mrs. Patterson yesterday about rent and money. I know things are hard. He set down his ice cream. Lily, that's not something you need to worry about. But I do worry. Because you worry. I can tell. She was 6 years old. She should have been thinking about unicorns and dinosaurs and which chapter book to read next. Not about rent, not about whether her father could keep them fed. Things have been tight, Logan admitted, but we're going to be okay. I promise. Is the princess lady going to help? Her name's Elena. And maybe. I don't know yet. I think you should let her help. She seems nice, and she makes you smile different. Smile different how? Like you're not pretending. Lily took another bite of ice cream. You smile a lot, but usually it's the pretend kind. Like when Mrs. Patterson asks if you're okay, and you say yes even though you're not. But yesterday when Elena was here, you smiled the real kind. Logan didn't know what to say to that. Didn't know when his 6-year-old had learned to read him so well. Didn't know how to explain that sometimes pretending was the only way to keep going. I'll think about it, he said finally. Okay? Okay. But I think you should say yes. Why? Because you're always taking care of me. Maybe it's time someone took care of you too. Logan pulled her into a hug, ice cream and all, and held on tight. She was right. She was so damn right it hurt. That night, after Lily was asleep, Logan sat at the kitchen table with his laptop, a 7-year-old machine that barely ran, and looked at his bank account. $462. Rent was due in 10 days. The daycare bill was already late. The car needed new brakes he couldn't afford. He pulled out Elena's check and stared at it. $5,000. Enough to cover everything and buy him breathing room for the first time in years, but also a commitment. An acknowledgement that he was part of her world now, whether he wanted to be or not. Logan thought about Richard's face when Elena fired him. The fury and the fear. The way his entire world had collapsed in minutes because he'd underestimated the woman he'd tried to control. He thought about what it would mean to work for someone like Elena. The expectations, the pressure, the constant feeling of being out of his depth. But he also thought about Lily, asking him not to let the mean people be mean, about the choice he'd made 4 years ago to help a stranger without thinking about the cost, about Elena sitting on his floor, listening to his daughter talk about dinosaurs like it was the most important conversation she'd ever had. Some choices you made with your head, some you made with your gut, and some you made because walking away would mean giving up on the person you wanted to be. Logan opened his phone and texted Elena. "I'll take the job. When do I start?" Her response came 30 seconds later. "Monday, 9 a.m. Welcome to Voss Dynamics." He set the phone down and sat in the quiet kitchen, listening to the hum of the refrigerator and the distant sound of traffic. Somewhere in the building, someone was playing music too loud. Somewhere else, a couple was arguing. Normal sounds, normal life. Except Logan's life wasn't normal anymore, and he wasn't sure if that was the best decision he'd ever made or the biggest mistake. He guessed he'd find out Monday. Monday morning came too fast. Logan stood outside Voss Tower at 8:45, wearing the same suit Marco had made, feeling like an imposter about to be exposed. The building looked different now, less like a monument to wealth and more like a place where he was supposed to belong. That somehow made it worse. Sarah met him in the lobby with 2 cups of coffee and a smirk. "You look like you're about to throw up." "I might." "Don't." Elena's already had 3 calls this morning from board members trying to walk back their votes. She doesn't need her new hire puking in the elevator. That's encouraging. Welcome to corporate warfare. It never actually ends. She handed Logan one of the coffees. "Come on, I'll show you your office." "I have an office." "You're a director-level consultant reporting to the CEO. Of course you have an office." They rode the elevator to the 40th floor, 2 below Elena's executive suite. The hallway was quieter here, less foot traffic, more closed doors. Sarah led Logan to a corner office with windows overlooking the waterfront. It wasn't huge, but it was bigger than his entire apartment. There was a desk, a computer, bookshelves, and a small conference table. "This is mine?" Logan asked. "For now. If you screw up, we'll move you to a cubicle in the basement." She grinned. "Kidding, mostly." Logan set his coffee down on the desk, trying to process the fact that he had a desk. "What am I supposed to do here?" "Elena wants you in her office at 9 for orientation. After that, Thomas will walk you through the legal framework for operational audits. Then you're meeting with department heads to introduce yourself." She paused. "Fair warning. Half of them think you're unqualified, and the other half think you're Elena's spy. Neither group is going to make this easy." "Great. Hey, you signed up for this? Own it." She left Logan alone in the office. He sat down in the leather chair behind the desk and spun it once, feeling ridiculous. Through the window, he could see ferries cutting across the sound, seagulls circling, the city waking up to another day. Somewhere out there, Lily was in her classroom learning multiplication. Somewhere out there, his old life was continuing without him. His phone buzzed. A text from Mrs. Patterson. "Lily got to school fine. She told everyone her dad works in a skyscraper now. She's very proud." Logan smiled despite the knot in his stomach and texted back a thank you. Then he stood, straightened his tie, and headed upstairs. Elena's office looked different in the morning light. Less imposing, more lived in. She was standing by the windows with her phone pressed to her ear, pacing while she talked. "I don't care what the Journal is reporting," she said into the phone. "Our statement stands. Richard Harper retired to pursue other opportunities." That's the official line. "Yes, I understand they're digging. Let them dig. We've got nothing to hide." "Fine. Set up the interview for Thursday. But I'm not discussing internal personnel matters on the record." She hung up and turned to Logan. "Morning. Coffee?" "Sarah already got me one." "Good. You'll need it." She gestured to the chairs by her desk. "Sit. We need to talk about what happens next." Logan sat. She pulled a folder from her desk and slid it across to him. "This is your contract. Standard terms, everything we discussed Friday. 80,000 base, full benefits, performance bonuses tied to audit outcomes. Read it tonight, sign it tomorrow if you're comfortable." Logan opened the folder. The contract was 20 pages of dense legal language that might as well have been written in another language. "You should have a lawyer look at this," Elena said. "Thomas can recommend someone if you don't have one." "I don't have one." "Then I'll have Thomas set it up. Don't sign anything until you've had independent counsel review it. I mean that. You're the one offering me the job. Why do you care if I get screwed by the contract?" "'Cause if you feel screwed 6 months from now, you'll leave. And I need you here, doing this work, without resentment clouding your judgment." She leaned back. Also, it's the right thing to do. I've seen too many people get taken advantage of because they didn't know better. I'm not doing that to you. Logan closed the folder. Okay, I'll get a lawyer. Good. Now let's talk about your actual job. She pulled up a document on her laptop and turned the screen toward Logan. Voss Dynamics has 14 divisions, 230 employees, an annual revenue of $800 million. Over the next 6 months, I want you to audit every major operational process we have. Procurement, HR, finance, R&D, everything. That's insane. I can't. You can, and you will. Because right now, I don't trust anyone in this company except Sarah, Thomas, Rebecca, and you. Richard had 30 years to build his network, plant his people, create systems that benefited him instead of us. I need to know where the rot goes. What if it's everywhere? Then we burn it down and start over. But I need to know. She met Logan's eyes. Logan, I'm not asking you to be an accountant or a lawyer or a process engineer. I'm asking you to be a bullshit detector. Look at how things work. Ask why they work that way. Find the places where people are lying, cutting corners, or protecting their turf at the company's expense. And when I find those places, you report to me, directly. No one else sees your findings until I do. Then we decide together how to fix it. People are going to hate me. Yes, they are. Can you handle that? Logan thought about the board meeting, about Richard's face when he called out his numbers, about the fact that he'd already made enemies just by showing up. Yeah, he said, I can handle it. Then let's get started. The first week was brutal. Thomas walked Logan through the legal framework for audits, what he could and couldn't access, how to document findings, what constituted evidence versus speculation. Rebecca gave him crash courses in corporate strategy, teaching him how to read financial statements, understand org charts, and spot red flags in budget allocations. Sarah handed him a stack of files 3 feet high and told him to start reading. The department heads were worse. Logan met with each of them individually, introducing himself and explaining his role. Most were polite but cold, answering his questions with the minimum information necessary. A few were openly hostile. The head of procurement, a man named Gerald with a comb-over and a superiority complex, actually laughed when Logan asked about his vendor selection process. You want me to explain procurement to a delivery driver? He said. Former delivery driver, and yeah, I do. This is absurd. Elena's lost her mind. Maybe, but she's still the CEO, and I'm still here asking questions. So you can answer them now, or you can answer them later when I'm reporting directly to her about why you wouldn't cooperate. That wiped the smile off his face. He walked Logan through the basics, vendor databases, bid processes, approval chains. It all sounded legitimate until Logan started asking about specific contracts. Why do we pay 30% more for office supplies than the market rate? Logan asked, pointing to a line item in Gerald's budget. Preferred vendor relationship. They provide better service. Better how? Faster delivery, higher quality. Can you show me the service level agreements that justify the premium? He couldn't, or wouldn't. Logan made a note and moved on, but he could feel Gerald's eyes on him the whole time, calculating how much of a threat he actually was. By Friday, Logan had met with all 14 department heads and compiled a list of 32 things that didn't make sense. Some were probably innocent, inefficiencies born from legacy systems or bureaucratic inertia, but others felt deliberate. Contracts that paid above market rates to vendors owned by shell companies. Hiring practices that favored certain recruiting firms despite poor placement records. Budget line items that didn't match actual spending. Logan brought his findings to Elena late Friday afternoon. She read through his notes in silence, her expression growing darker with each page. Gerald's vendor contracts are the worst, Logan said. Half of them don't have competitive bids on file. The other half have bids, but they're all from companies that share office addresses. So they're fake or coordinated. Either way, we're overpaying by at least 20% across the board. Elena set down the notes. How much are we talking? In procurement alone, maybe $4 million a year? $4 million, she said it quietly, like she was testing the weight of the number. Over 10 years, that's $40 million. Gerald's been here 12 years. Yeah. What else? Logan walked her through the rest. The recruiting firms that placed underqualified candidates at inflated salaries. The IT contracts that paid for software licenses they didn't use. The travel policies that somehow cost twice as much as industry standard. It's not just one person, Logan said. It's a system. People protecting each other, taking little cuts here and there, assuming no one's paying attention. And no one was. Until now. Elena stood and walked to the window. The sun was setting, painting the sky orange and purple. How do we fix this? We fire the people who are stealing. We renegotiate the contracts. We build new processes that make it harder to game the system. And if we do that, we lose institutional knowledge. We create chaos. We make enemies of everyone who benefited from the old way. Yeah, but the alternative is letting it continue. She turned to face Logan. You're not wrong. I just hate that it comes to this. These are people my father hired, people he trusted, people who've been robbing you blind for over a decade. I know, she sighed. Start with Gerald. Build an airtight case. I want documentation for every dollar he's misspent, then we'll move on to the others. That's going to take weeks. Then take weeks. I'd rather be thorough than fast. Logan left her office as the building was emptying out for the weekend. Most people were gone by 6 on Fridays, eager to start their lives outside these walls. He should have left too. Lily was with Mrs. Patterson, waiting for him to pick her up. But Logan found himself sitting in his office, staring at the files spread across his desk, trying to figure out how to build a case against someone who'd had 12 years to cover his tracks. His phone rang. Elena. Go home, Logan. I'm almost done. No, you're not. You're spiraling. I can see your light on from my office. Go home. Spend the weekend with your daughter. This will still be here Monday. I just want to... Logan, go home. That's not a suggestion. He hung up, packed his bag, and left. The elevator ride down felt longer than usual, like he was descending from one world into another. By the time he reached his car, the weight of the week had settled onto his shoulders like a physical thing. Lily was drawing at Mrs. Patterson's kitchen table when Logan arrived. She looked up, saw his face, and immediately ran over. Bad day? She asked. Long day. There's a difference. Do you want to talk about it? Logan almost laughed. When did you get so grown up? I've always been grown up. You just noticed. She grabbed her backpack. Can we get pizza for dinner? Yeah, Bug, we can get pizza. They went to the place down the street, the one with the checkered tablecloths and the owner who always asked about Lily's school. She got pepperoni. Logan got a beer he probably shouldn't have and tried not to think about Gerald's spreadsheets or Richard's shell companies or the fact that he'd signed up to spend the next 6 months digging through other people's corruption. Daddy, can I tell you something? Lily asked, cheese stringing from her mouth to the slice. Always. Some of the kids at school said you must be rich now because you work in a fancy building. We're not rich, Lily. I know. I told them that, but they didn't believe me. She took another bite. Are we going to be rich? I don't know. Maybe, if I don't screw this up. You won't screw it up. You're really good at your job. I've had this job for 1 week. You don't know if I'm good at it. Yes, I do, because you care about getting it right. That's what makes someone good at something. Logan reached across the table and ruffled her hair. When did you get so smart? I've always been smart. You just noticed. The weekend passed too quickly. Saturday. Logan took Lily to the aquarium because she'd been asking for weeks, and he finally had money to afford it. They spent 3 hours watching jellyfish drift and sea otters play, and for a little while Logan forgot about procurement fraud and vendor kickbacks, and all the ways people found to steal from each other. Sunday he made the mistake of opening his laptop. He told himself he'd just review one file. Just check one thing. But 3 hours later, he was deep in Gerald's vendor contracts, cross-referencing shell company addresses and corporate filings, and Lily had to physically close his laptop to get his attention. You're doing it again, she said. Doing what? The thing where you disappear into your work and forget I exist. I wasn't... Logan stopped. She was right. I'm sorry, Bug. It's okay. But can we do something together? Like watch a movie or play a game? They watched a movie. Some animated thing about a girl who discovers she has magic powers and has to save her village. Lily loved it. Logan fell asleep 20 minutes in and woke up to her poking his shoulder during the credits. You missed the best part, she said. Sorry, long week. I know, but you're here now. That's what matters. Monday morning, Logan was back at his desk by 8, diving into Gerald's files with fresh eyes. Sarah stopped by around 9 with coffee and bad news. "Gerald knows you're investigating him," she said. "How?" "Because you've requested 12 years of vendor contracts, and he's not an idiot. He went to Elena this morning claiming you're on a witch hunt." "What did she say?" "She told him to cooperate fully or start looking for a new job. He's not happy. I don't care if he's happy. I care if he's stealing." "Oh, he's definitely stealing. I ran some preliminary checks on those shell companies. 3 of them are registered to his brother-in-law, 2 more to his wife's cousin." Logan sat back in his chair. "So it's not just kickbacks, it's fraud." "Yep, and if we can prove it, we can prosecute. Criminal charges, not just termination." "Does Elena know?" "Not yet. I wanted to confirm before we brought it to her. But Logan, this is big. If Gerald goes down, he's going to take other people with him, and they're going to fight back." "Let them fight." Sarah studied him for a moment. "You're different than you were 2 weeks ago. More confident, less apologetic." "Is that bad?" "No, it's good. Just don't let it make you reckless. These people play for keeps." She left, and Logan went back to the files. By lunch, he had enough evidence to bury Gerald 3 times over. Fake bids, inflated invoices, payments to companies that didn't exist. It was almost insulting how sloppy he'd been, like he never expected anyone to actually look. Logan was compiling his findings when his office door opened. Gerald stood there, his face red, his hands clenched into fists. "You need to stop," he said. Logan looked up calmly. "Stop what?" "This witch hunt, this vendetta. I don't know what Elena promised you, but you're making a mistake." "I'm doing my job, that's all." "Your job is to make me look bad so she can justify bringing in her own people. I see what this is. What you see is 12 years of fraud finally catching up to you." Logan gestured to the files on his desk. "You've been stealing from this company since before I knew it existed, and now you're going to pay for it. You have no idea who you're dealing with." "Actually, I do. You're a middle manager who got greedy and thought no one would notice. You're not special, Gerald. You're just crooked." His face went from red to purple. "I've been with this company longer than you've been alive, and you spent that time building a system to rob it. Congratulations. Now get out of my office before I have security remove you." He didn't move. They stared at each other across the desk, and Logan saw the exact moment Gerald realized he wasn't backing down. He turned and walked out without another word, slamming the door hard enough to rattle the frame. Sarah appeared 30 seconds later. "I heard that from down the hall. You okay?" "Fine." "He threatened you." "Not explicitly, just implied consequences." "That's still a threat. You need to report this to Thomas." "I will, after I finish the audit. I'm not giving him any excuse to claim I'm biased or vindictive." Logan, "Sarah, I appreciate the concern, but I've dealt with worse than Gerald. I'll be fine." She didn't look convinced, but she left Logan alone. He worked through lunch, through the afternoon, through the time he should have left to pick up Lily. Mrs. Patterson texted that she had her and he shouldn't rush. Logan texted back thanks and kept working. By 7 p.m., he had a document 43 pages long detailing every fraudulent contract Gerald had executed over the past 12 years. Total theft, $6.2 million. Logan saved it, backed it up to 3 different locations, and sent a copy to Elena with a simple subject line. "Gerald findings, complete." Her response came 2 minutes later. "My office, now." Logan took the elevator up, carrying a printed copy of the report. Elena's door was open. She was sitting at her desk with Thomas and Rebecca, all 3 of them looking grim. "Close the door," Elena said. Logan did. She gestured to a chair. He sat. "Gerald went to the board this afternoon," Thomas said. "He's claiming you're harassing him, creating a hostile work environment. He wants you fired." "On what grounds?" "Aggressive questioning, unsubstantiated accusations, overreach of authority." Thomas slid a document across the desk. "He filed a formal complaint. It goes to the board for review." "Let them review it. I've got 6 million reasons why he should be in jail, not filing complaints." Elena picked up Logan's report. "You're sure about this? Every number, every contract, every accusation? I've triple-checked everything. It's solid." "Then we move forward. Thomas, draft termination paperwork. Rebecca, start the process for criminal referral. I want Gerald arrested before he has time to destroy evidence. Elena, if we do this, the board is going to push back, Rebecca said carefully. Gerald's complaint gives them cover to question your judgment. They'll say you're being reckless, vindictive, too aggressive. Let them say it. I've got documentation. Documentation can be disputed. Narratives can be spun. You need to be prepared for this to get ugly. It's already ugly. It's been ugly for years. We just stopped pretending. Elena looked at Logan. Logan, are you prepared to testify if this goes to court? Yes. Are you prepared to have your life picked apart by defense attorneys trying to discredit you? Logan thought about that. About what it would mean to sit in a courtroom while lawyers called him unqualified, biased, a fraud himself. About Lily hearing those things. About the possibility that he'd come this far only to be destroyed by people better at this game than he'd ever be. Yes, he said again. Elena smiled faintly. Then we're doing this. Thomas, make it happen. Gerald was escorted out of the building the next morning by police. They came at 8 a.m. before most employees arrived, but word spread fast. By 9, everyone knew. By 10, the whispers had turned into open speculation. By lunch, 3 other department heads had submitted their resignations. They're running, Sarah said, standing in Logan's office doorway. Gerald's arrest spooked them. Good. Let them run. Makes it easier to figure out who's dirty. Elena wants to see you. Logan followed her upstairs. Elena's office was full, board members, lawyers, people Logan didn't recognize. The energy was tense, hostile. Elena stood by her desk, arms crossed, looking like she was ready for war. Logan, these are representatives from our insurance carrier and our outside legal counsel, she said. They have concerns about the Gerald situation. A woman in her 50s with sharp features and sharper eyes stepped forward. Mr. Reed, I'm Catherine Mills, senior partner at Holbrook & Mills. We represent Voss Dynamics in all litigation matters. I need to understand the basis for your audit findings. I found evidence of systematic fraud over 12 years, fake vendor contracts, kickbacks, inflated invoicing. It's all in my report. And your qualifications for conducting this audit? I'm a director-level operational consultant hired by Ms. Voss. With what background? What credentials? None. I look at processes and ask questions, that's all. Catherine's expression tightened. Mr. Reed, Gerald Thompson has been with this company for 12 years. He has an MBA from Wharton, 25 years of procurement experience, and an unblemished record. You've been here 2 weeks. Do you really expect me to believe he's the fraud and you're the hero? I don't care what you believe. The evidence speaks for itself. Evidence you gathered, evidence that could be disputed, misinterpreted, or entirely fabricated by someone with an agenda. I don't have an agenda. Don't you? You're a delivery driver who walked into a CEO's office and convinced her to give you a 6-figure job. Some might say you have every incentive to justify that decision by manufacturing a crisis. The room went silent. Logan felt every eye on him, waiting to see if he'd crack. You're right, he said quietly. I'm not qualified. I don't have credentials. I don't have experience. All I have is a stack of documents showing that Gerald Thompson stole $6 million from this company. If you want to dispute that, dispute the documents. But don't stand here and pretend my background changes the numbers. Catherine stared at Logan. Then she turned to Elena. If we prosecute Gerald and lose, the board will hold you responsible. This could cost you your position. Then I'll lose my position, but I'm not letting him walk because it's politically convenient. Elena, we're done here. Thank you for your counsel. I'll take it under advisement. Elena's tone made it clear they were dismissed. Catherine and her team left. The room emptied until it was just Elena, Thomas, and Logan. That went well, Thomas said dryly. They're scared, Elena said. Good. They should be. If Gerald stole $6 million, others stole more. I want them all looking over their shoulders. You're gambling everything on Logan's findings, Thomas pointed out. If he's wrong, I'm not wrong, Logan said. But if you are, Elena loses the company. The board removes her. Richard's faction takes over. Everything we fought for disappears. Then I better not be wrong. Thomas looked at Elena. She nodded once. He sighed and left. You know he's right, Elena said when they were alone. If this falls apart, I'm finished. It won't fall apart. You sound very confident for someone who's been doing this job for 2 weeks. I'm confident because I've checked the work. Gerald's guilty. The evidence is there. It's not going anywhere. She walked to the window, looking out at the city. I keep thinking about my father, about how much he trusted people, how he built this company on relationships and loyalty, and how that trust made it easy for people like Gerald to steal from him. You can't blame yourself for that. I don't. I blame them. But I also wonder if I'm just like him, trusting the wrong people, building something that's rotting from the inside. You're not. You saw the rot, and you're cutting it out. That's the opposite of what he did. She turned to face Logan. What if you're the wrong person to trust? What if Catherine's right, and I gave you this job because I wanted to believe you're different, but you're just another angle I can't see yet? The question hit harder than Logan expected. Not because he thought she was right, but because he understood why she'd ask it. I can't prove I'm trustworthy, he said. Not with words, only with time. So either you believe me now, or you wait and see. But I'm not going anywhere, and I'm not lying to you. She studied him for a long moment. Then she smiled, small and sad. I believe you. I don't know why, but I do. That's enough. It wasn't, really, but it was all they had. The Gerald case took 3 months to wind through the legal system, and in that time everything changed. 2 more department heads were fired for similar schemes. 4 board members resigned rather than face scrutiny. Elena brought in new leadership, younger people who hadn't been part of her father's old guard, and the company started to feel different. Less like a monument to the past, and more like something being built in real time. Logan kept his head down and did the work. Audited departments, asked uncomfortable questions, built cases against people who'd been stealing in small, careful increments for years. Some days he felt like he was making a difference. Other days he felt like he was just rearranging deck chairs while the ship slowly sank. Lily adjusted faster than Logan did. She made friends with the receptionist on the 40th floor, a woman named Marie who kept a jar of candy on her desk and always had time to hear about Lily's day when Logan brought her to the office after school. She started drawing pictures of the building, adding details she remembered from her visits, the lobby fountain, the glass elevators, the view from Logan's office window. "Is this your castle, Daddy?" she asked one evening, holding up a drawing of Voss Tower with stick figures in the windows. "It's not mine, Bug. I just work there." "But you're important there. Marie said so." Marie's being nice. "No, she's not. She said you're the person who tells the truth when everyone else is scared to. That's important." Logan didn't know what to say to that, so he just hugged her and told her the drawing was beautiful. The preliminary hearing for Gerald's case happened on a Wednesday in late spring. Elena, Thomas, and Logan sat in a courthouse that smelled like floor polish and old wood, while Gerald's lawyer argued that the charges should be dismissed. The prosecution presented Logan's audit findings. Gerald's lawyer called them circumstantial, biased, the work of an unqualified consultant with an agenda. The judge, a woman in her 60s with gray hair and no patience for nonsense, read through the documents in silence. Then she looked at Gerald's lawyer. "Counselor, your client signed contracts with companies that don't exist. He approved payments to vendors registered to his family members. He inflated invoices by 30% and pocketed the difference. That's not circumstantial. That's fraud. Your Honor, the audit was conducted by someone with no forensic accounting credentials. The audit was thorough, well-documented, and supported by physical evidence. If you're disputing the methodology, file a motion, but this case is going to trial. Next." They walked out of the courthouse into bright sunlight. Elena looked lighter than Logan had seen her in months. "That went better than I expected," she said. "She didn't even hesitate," Thomas agreed. "Gerald's going to jail. The only question is for how long." "Good." Elena turned to Logan. "Thank you for all of this. I just did my job." "You did more than that. You gave me the ammunition to clean house. This company's better because of you." Logan wanted to believe her. Part of him did. But another part kept waiting for the other shoe to drop, for someone to figure out he was still just a guy who used to deliver flowers and had no business being here. That night, Logan took Lily out for dinner at a place nicer than their usual spots. White tablecloths, menus without prices, waiters who called her Miss and treated her like royalty. She ordered pasta and spent the whole meal telling Logan about a boy in her class who kept trying to impress her by doing handstands. "Do you like him?" Logan asked. "He's okay, but he's not very good at handstands." "That's a reasonable deal breaker," she grinned. "Daddy, can I ask you something serious?" "Always." "Are you happy?" The question caught Logan off guard. What do you mean? At your job, in your life. Are you happy? Logan thought about that, about the stress of the audits and the weight of Elena's expectations and the constant feeling of being one mistake away from losing everything. But he also thought about the fact that he could afford this dinner without checking his bank account first, that Lily had new shoes that fit, that they weren't 3 days late on rent anymore. Yeah, Bug, I think I am. Are you? I'm happy when you're happy, and you seem happy now, different happy than before. Different how? Before you smiled, but you were always worried. Now you smile and you mean it. She was right. Somewhere in the past few months, the weight Logan had carried for years had lightened just enough to let him breathe. It wasn't gone. He didn't know if it ever would be, but it was manageable. I'm glad, he said, because you deserve a dad who's actually present, not just pretending. You were always present, Daddy. You just didn't know it. They finished dinner and walked back to the car through streets that felt friendlier than they used to. Seattle was still expensive, still hard, still the kind of place that chewed people up and spit them out. But tonight, it felt like a city Logan could belong to instead of one he was just surviving. The trial started 2 weeks later. Logan testified on the second day, walking the jury through his findings in language simple enough that anyone could understand. Gerald's lawyer tried to paint him as unqualified, as someone with a grudge, as a consultant who manufactured evidence to justify his own existence. But the documents didn't lie. The shell companies were real. The inflated invoices were real. The money was gone. The jury deliberated for 4 hours and came back with guilty verdicts on all counts. Gerald got 8 years. His lawyer filed an appeal that went nowhere. And just like that, the man who'd stolen $6 million over 12 years was gone. Elena threw a small celebration at the office the day the appeal was denied. Nothing fancy, just champagne and catered food in the conference room with the core team who'd worked the case. Sarah made a toast about persistence. Thomas made a joke about never doubting Elena's instincts. Rebecca thanked everyone for their professionalism. When it was Logan's turn, he didn't know what to say. He stood there holding a glass of champagne he hadn't touched, looking at these people who'd become something close to friends, and tried to find words for what the past few months had meant. I'm not good at speeches, he said finally, but I want to say thank you for taking a chance on someone who had no business being here, for trusting me when you had every reason not to, for teaching me how to do this job. He looked at Elena, and for reminding me that doing the right thing actually matters sometimes. Elena raised her glass. To doing the right thing, even when it's hard, especially when it's hard. They drank, and for a moment, everything felt possible. That feeling lasted until the following Monday, when Elena called Logan into her office with an expression he couldn't read. "Close the door," she said. Logan did. She gestured to a chair. He sat. "The board met over the weekend," she said. "They want to make some changes." Logan's stomach dropped. "What kind of changes?" "They want to restructure the company, bring in outside management consultants to evaluate our operations top to bottom. They're calling it a strategic review, but what they really want is to prove I've been reckless, that the Gerald situation was an overreaction, that I'm cleaning house for personal reasons instead of business ones." "That's garbage. You had evidence?" "I know. But evidence doesn't matter when the narrative gets away from you. Richard's faction lost the vote, but they didn't lose their influence. They've been whispering to investors, to analysts, to anyone who'll listen, and now the board's spooked. What does this mean for you? It means I'm fighting for my job again. And this time, I might lose." Logan sat back, trying to process what she was saying. "What do you need from me? Honestly, I don't know. The consultants are going to tear apart everything we've built. They're going to question every decision, every firing, every audit. They're going to come after you specifically because if they can discredit you, they can discredit me. Let them try. Logan, these aren't corporate lawyers trying to win a case. These are professional reputation destroyers. They'll dig into your past, your finances, your personal life. They'll find every mistake you've ever made and use it to paint you as a fraud. I don't have anything to hide. Everyone has something to hide. The question is whether you're ready for it to become public." Logan thought about Lily's mother, about the fact that she'd left without explanation and never looked back, about the restraining order he'd had to file when she showed up drunk at their apartment 2 years ago demanding money, about all the small failures and desperate choices that made up a life lived on the margins. "If they come after me, they come after me," he said. "I'm not backing down." Elena smiled faintly. "I knew you'd say that. I just needed to hear it." "What's the timeline?" "The consultants start next week. They'll spend 3 months reviewing operations. Then they present findings to the board. If the findings support me, I'm safe. If they don't," she trailed off, "then we make sure they support you." "It's not that simple. These consultants are hired guns. They find what they're paid to find. And the board members funding this review aren't paying for good news. Then we give them facts they can't dispute. We open every door, answer every question, show them exactly how much we've improved since Richard left. And if that's not enough, then we fight anyway, because the alternative is letting them win." She stood and walked to the window, looking out at the city she was trying so hard to protect. "You know what the hardest part of all this is? Not the board, not the lawyers, not even the possibility of losing. It's the loneliness. My father always had people he could trust, advisors, friends, allies. I don't have that. I have Thomas and Sarah and Rebecca and you. And sometimes I wonder if that's enough." "It's enough. Those 4 people are worth more than 100 who only stick around when it's convenient." "You really believe that?" "Yeah, I do." She turned to face Logan, and for the first time since he'd met her, she looked vulnerable. Not weak, never weak, but human in a way she usually kept hidden. "Can I tell you something?" she asked. "Of course. When you walked into my office that first day, soaking wet and holding those flowers, I almost sent you away. I was so wrapped up in my own problems, so tired of people wanting things from me, that I couldn't see past it. But then I read David's card, and something shifted. It was like he was reminding me that the world's bigger than boardrooms and deals and power plays, that the people who matter are the ones you don't notice at first. I'm glad you noticed. So am I." She paused. "You've changed my life, Logan. I need you to know that. Not because you caught Gerald or helped me fight Richard, but because you reminded me what it feels like to trust someone. Really trust them, without calculation or strategy or fear of being betrayed." Logan didn't know what to say. The weight of her words settled over him like something both precious and terrifying. "You've changed mine too," he said quietly. "I was drowning before I met you. Every day was just survival, just trying to keep my head above water long enough to make sure Lily was okay. You gave me a chance to build something instead of just endure. That's not small. Then let's not waste it. Let's make sure when this is over, we're both still standing." "Deal." The consultants arrived the following Monday like an occupying force. 6 of them, all wearing identical Navy suits and carrying identical leather bags. Led by a man named Preston Black, who looked like he'd been designed in a lab to inspire distrust. They set up camp in a conference room and started requesting documents, interviews, data, everything and anything that might reveal weakness. Logan spent 3 days being interviewed by a woman named Diana, whose smile never reached her eyes. She asked about his background, his qualifications, his methodology. She asked about Gerald, about the other audits, about his relationship with Elena. Every question was a trap, every answer a potential weapon. "You and Ms. Voss seem quite close," Diana said on the 3rd day, her tone neutral but her implication clear. "We work together closely, that's all." "Is it? You have dinner at her home. She's met your daughter. That seems unusual for a professional relationship." "Elena's not just my boss. She's someone I respect, someone I trust. If that's unusual, maybe that's the problem." "Mr. Reed, I'm not suggesting anything inappropriate. I'm simply trying to understand the dynamics at play. Ms. Voss hired you under unusual circumstances. She's defended your work despite significant pushback. Some might see that as favoritism rather than sound judgment." "Some might. Those people would be wrong." Diana made a note. "Let's talk about your audit methodology. You don't have formal training in forensic accounting. How do you ensure your findings are accurate?" "I check everything twice. I document every source. I don't make claims I can't support." "But you're not an accountant. You're not a lawyer. You're not trained in financial analysis. How can you be certain you're not missing something?" "Because I don't assume I know everything. I ask questions. I follow the money. I look for patterns that don't make sense. That's not complicated. It's just thorough. And when you find these patterns, you report them to Ms. Voss. Not to the board. Not to legal. Just to her." That's the structure she set up. I'm her direct report, which some might see as creating an environment where you only find what she wants you to find. Logan leaned forward. Diana, let me save you some time. You're trying to paint me as unqualified and Elena as manipulative. You're trying to build a narrative where we cook this whole thing up to justify her vendetta against Richard, but the facts don't support that narrative. Gerald stole $6 million. We have proof. He's in prison. That's not manipulation, that's accountability. Unless the proof was manufactured. It wasn't. And if you actually believe it was, you should be able to prove it. So prove it. Show me one document I fabricated, one invoice I altered, one piece of evidence I planted. Go ahead. She couldn't because there wasn't any, but Logan knew that wouldn't stop her from trying. The consultant spent 12 weeks at Voss Dynamics, and by the end, the entire company was exhausted. Morale was low. Productivity had dropped. People were spending more time preparing for interviews than doing their actual jobs. Elena looked like she'd aged 5 years, the stress etched into every line of her face. They're going to present next week, she told Logan over coffee in her office. I've tried to get a preview of the findings, but Preston's locked it down. Whatever they're recommending, it's not good. How bad? Bad enough that 3 board members have already reached out to express concerns. They're setting the stage for a vote of no confidence. Can you fight it? I don't know. It depends what the consultants say. If they recommend removing me, the board will use it as cover. They'll say they're following expert advice, protecting shareholder value, all the usual justifications. And if they do that, she set down her coffee, then I'm done, and everything we've built falls apart. No, it doesn't. Because even if they force you out, the work stands. The corruption's gone. The systems are cleaner. The company's stronger. That doesn't disappear just because you're not in charge. But someone else will be. Someone who'll undo it all. Bring back the old guard, the old ways. Make it like I was never here. Then we make sure they can't do that. We document everything. We build systems they can't dismantle. We make it so the next person has no choice but to keep going in the direction you started. She looked at Logan with something like hope. You think that's possible? I think it's worth trying. The presentation happened on a Thursday afternoon in the main boardroom. The entire board was there, along with Elena, Thomas, Sarah, Rebecca, and Logan. Preston Black stood at the head of the table with a slide deck and an expression that suggested he was about to deliver a terminal diagnosis. Thank you all for your time, he began. Over the past 12 weeks, my team has conducted a comprehensive review of Voss Dynamics operations, financial controls, and leadership structure. What we've found is concerning. He clicked to the first slide. A list of findings, each one more damning than the last. Excessive turnover in senior leadership. Aggressive restructuring that disrupted established processes. Over-reliance on unqualified consultants. Financial exposure from lawsuits related to terminated employees. In our professional opinion, Preston continued, Voss Dynamics has been managed recklessly over the past 6 months. While Ms. Voss's intentions may have been good, her execution has created significant risk for shareholders. What's your recommendation? One of the board members asked. Preston clicked to the next slide. We recommend immediate leadership transition. Ms. Voss should step down as CEO, with an experienced interim executive brought in to stabilize operations. Additionally, we recommend terminating the operational audit program and the consultant responsible for it. Every eye in the room turned to Logan. He kept his expression neutral, but inside his stomach was twisting. Elena stood. May I respond? Preston gestured magnanimously. Of course. Your findings ignore context. Yes, we've had leadership turnover because we fired people who were stealing from the company. Yes, we've disrupted processes because those processes enabled fraud. Yes, we've relied on an unqualified consultant because that consultant uncovered $6 million in theft that your predecessors missed. She paused. You're calling it reckless. I call it necessary. Ms. Voss, with respect, the market doesn't care about necessity. It cares about stability. And right now, your leadership is anything but stable. Then maybe stability is overrated. The room went silent. Elena looked around the table, meeting each board member's eyes. My father built this company on relationships and trust, she said, and those relationships were used to rob us blind for over a decade. I'm not interested in rebuilding that system. I'm interested in building something better, something honest. If that makes me reckless, so be it, but I'm not stepping down. One of the older board members, a man named Harrison who'd been with the company since the beginning, cleared his throat. Elena, no one's questioning your commitment, but the question is whether you have the experience to lead through this transition. Experience like Richard's? Experience like Gerald's? Forgive me if I'm skeptical. Experience like someone who understands that running a company requires compromise, balance, political skill. I understand all of that. I'm just not willing to compromise on integrity. Harrison sighed. Then I'm afraid we have a problem. Elena looked at Logan. There was a question in her eyes, a silent plea for something he didn't know how to give. Logan stood. Can I say something? He asked. Preston looked annoyed. Mr. Reed, you're not a board member. I know. But I'm the consultant you're recommending they fire, so I figure I've got standing. Harrison waved a hand. Go ahead. Logan took a breath. 6 months ago, I was delivering flowers. I had no business being here, no qualifications, no credentials. You're right about that. But I also had no agenda. I wasn't protecting territory or angling for power. I just looked at the numbers and asked if they made sense. And when they didn't, I said so. He looked around the room. Elena didn't hire me because I was qualified. She hired me because everyone who was qualified had too much invested in the system staying broken. She needed someone who'd tell her the truth, even when it was uncomfortable. That's what I've done. If you think that's reckless, then we have very different definitions of the word. The problem isn't your honesty, Mr. Reed, Preston said. It's your lack of expertise. You're asking us to trust the judgment of someone with no background in this field. You're right, I don't have expertise, but I do have something you don't. I've got nothing to lose. I'm not protecting a consulting contract or building a reputation. I'm just trying to do the right thing, and if that's not valuable to this company, then maybe I'm not the problem. Maybe you are. The room erupted. Board members shouted objections. Preston demanded order. Elena stood beside Logan, silent but steady, and he realized she was smiling. Harrison banged his hand on the table. Enough! Everyone sit down! They sat. Harrison looked at Preston. Your recommendation is noted, but I'd like to propose an alternative. Which is? Preston asked stiffly. We give Elena 6 more months. She implements the changes she's started. We monitor progress closely, and at the end of 6 months, we evaluate. If the company's stronger, she stays. If it's not, she goes. But we don't make that decision based on a consultant's opinion. We make it based on results. There was a long pause. Then, one by one, the board members nodded. All in favor? Harrison asked. The vote was 11-3. Elena had her 6 months. Preston looked like he'd swallowed glass. I'll prepare a revised report reflecting the board's decision. You do that, Harrison said. Meeting adjourned. They filed out of the boardroom. Elena pulled Logan aside in the hallway, her eyes bright. Thank you, she said. I didn't do anything. Harrison made the call. You gave him a reason to. You stood up when you didn't have to. That mattered. What happens now? Now we have 6 months to prove them wrong. Think you're up for it? Yeah, I think I am. She squeezed Logan's arm once, then headed back to her office. Logan stood in the hallway for a moment, trying to process what had just happened. 6 more months. 6 more months to build something that might actually last. His phone buzzed. A text from Lily. Mrs. Patterson says you're doing something important today. Did it go okay? Logan texted back. Yeah, Bug. It went okay. Good. I'm proud of you. He smiled and headed back to his office. There was work to do. The next 6 months were a blur. They restructured departments, implemented new controls, brought in fresh leadership that actually cared about doing the job right instead of just protecting their positions. The company started to hum in a way it hadn't before. Efficient, purposeful, honest. Revenue climbed, employee satisfaction improved, the stock price stabilized, and slowly, Elena started to relax. Not completely. She'd probably never be the kind of person who fully let her guard down. But enough to smile more, to take weekends off, to show up at Logan's apartment on a random Tuesday with pizza and homework help for Lily. You don't have to do this, Logan told her the 3rd time it happened. I know, but I want to. Is that okay? Lily answered before Logan could. It's very okay. We like having you here. I like being here, Elena said, and she meant it. The board meeting at the end of the 6 months was almost anticlimactic. Harrison presented the results: revenue up 18%, operational costs down 12%, employee retention at a 5-year high. The consultant's predictions had been wrong. The company wasn't just stable, it was thriving. I move that we extend Ms. Voss's tenure as CEO indefinitely, Harrison said. The vote was unanimous. Afterward, Elena took Logan, Sarah, Thomas, and Rebecca out for dinner at a restaurant where the waiters knew her by name and the wine cost more than Logan used to make in a week. They toasted to survival, to success, to the fact that they'd somehow pulled it off. What's next? Sarah asked. More of the same, Elena said. We keep building, keep improving, keep proving that doing it right is better than doing it easy. Sounds exhausting, Thomas joked. It is, but it's worth it. Later, after the others had left, Elena and Logan stood outside the restaurant while they waited for her car. Can I ask you something? She said. Sure. Why did you stay? After that first day, after the board meeting, after all the times you could have walked away? Why did you stay? Logan thought about that. About the choice he'd made 4 years ago to help a stranger, about the card with David Collier's handwriting, about Lily asking him not to let the mean people be mean. Because it mattered, he said finally. Because for the first time in a long time, I felt like I was doing something that actually made a difference, not just for me, but for other people. That's worth staying for. She nodded slowly. I'm glad you did. I couldn't have done any of this without you. Yeah, you could have. You just wouldn't have had as much fun. She laughed, and the sound was light and real. True. Her car pulled up. She turned to Logan before getting in. Logan, I know I'm your boss. I know there are lines we're supposed to maintain. But I also want you to know that you're more than an employee to me. You're a friend. One of the few I actually have. You're my friend too. And Lily's. She talks about you constantly. Good. Because I plan to keep showing up with pizza and homework help, if that's okay. It's more than okay. She smiled, got in the car, and drove away. Logan stood on the sidewalk for a while, watching the city move around him, thinking about how much had changed in less than a year. A year ago, he'd been invisible, just another person struggling to survive in a city that didn't care. Now he had a job he was good at, a daughter who was proud of him, a friend who trusted him with her company and her life. It wasn't perfect. Nothing ever was. There were still audits to finish, problems to solve, people who resented what they'd built. But it was real. It was honest. It was theirs. Logan pulled out his phone and texted Lily. On my way home, want to watch a movie? Her response came immediately. Yes, can we watch the one about the girl with magic powers? The one you made me watch 5 times already? It's a good movie, Daddy. You just don't appreciate it. Logan smiled. Okay, Bug. One more time. He started walking toward the parking garage, past the glass towers, and the expensive restaurants, and the people who belonged to this world in ways he was still learning. But for the first time, he didn't feel like an outsider looking in. He felt like someone who'd earned his place. The world operates on a simple truth most people miss. The ones who change everything are usually the ones nobody expected to matter. Not the experts with credentials hanging on their walls, not the insiders who speak the language and know the right hands to shake. The delivery drivers, the consultants with no pedigree, the single parents just trying to keep food on the table. They're easy to overlook, easy to dismiss, easy to underestimate, but they're also the ones who understand what real stakes feel like. Who know that integrity isn't a buzzword you deploy in meetings. It's the only currency that holds value when everything else collapses. Who choose to do the right thing not because it advances their career, but because someone has to, and no one else is stepping up. Elena had learned that lesson the hard way. She'd built her walls high, calculated every move, protected herself from betrayal by trusting no one. And those same instincts had nearly cost her everything. What saved her wasn't strategy or power or her father's legacy. It was Logan, a stranger who stopped to help because stopping was right, who asked uncomfortable questions because the answers mattered more than comfort, who stood beside her not for what he could gain, but because that's who he'd decided to be. People talk about transformation like it's a thunderbolt moment, a single decision that rewrites your life. But the real transformations happen in the accumulation of small choices. The decision to trust when every experience tells you not to speak up when silence would be safer, to believe that ordinary people can accomplish extraordinary things if they care enough to try. Logan drove home through the city lights, thinking about David Collier and a choice made 4 years ago on a random sidewalk. That choice had rippled forward in ways he never could have predicted, leading him here, to this life, to this moment where everything felt both fragile and unbreakable at the same time. He got to his car and sat behind the wheel, looking at the building where he worked, where he belonged. It wasn't perfect. Neither was he. But together they were building something that might actually last. His phone buzzed one more time, a text from Elena. "Thank you for everything. See you Monday." Logan texted back, "See you Monday." Then he drove home to his daughter, to their small apartment that finally felt like enough, to the life they'd built together from nothing but stubbornness and hope and the refusal to give up. The city lights blurred past the windows as he drove, and for the first time in longer than he could remember, Logan wasn't thinking about what might go wrong. He was thinking about what might go right, about the future they were building, one honest choice at a time. That was enough. It had to be. And somehow, impossibly, it was.